Pain tolerance segment?
Yeah, exactly.
Hamstring pull.
Hamstring pull. That's a little fracture of rib. Penn State Blake, grab a hammer, because during the commercial break, we're going to try something with Jay.
Oh, boy. I would just, as a general rule, I would say...
If I do it, then I'm liable.
That's
but if Penn State Blake does it, who cares? But we can get another researcher.
Penn State Blake,
Dameon's on deck.
Yeah, exactly. We're playing chess here, not checkers.
Yeah, that's right. Fall guy.
Yeah,
Everyone's got a good fall guy.
Got to have a fall guy.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. It's Wednesday. We got Lawrence Jackson in the house, guys. How we doing?
We're really good. I have to tell you something, Lawrence, that you're the fall guy for my fall guy. Just want to let you know, give you a heads up there that if something were to happen to Penn State Blake, and then I need to replace my fall guy because he's already taken a fall at one point, you're next up.
That's cool, as long as I get to drink for free like Penn State Blake is doing
That's true.
today.
Penn State Blake drinks for free. Because here's the thing. At some point in his life, Penn State Blake is doing 20 years
Might
for me.
Might be soon, Blake. Buckle up.
You have no idea. Yeah, sometimes I get into, I'll get into some, traffic and road rage, and now that I have a fall guy.
I mean, we already been in the situation when we first met in Vegas. We was already, I was ready to go.
That's a good point.
I was like, hey,
me and Lawrence almost got into it.
Not with each other, with some others. We almost had to
title match.
Lawrence and I were with a group of friends, and there was a young woman with us, and there was just a very drunk guy that was being way too aggressive with her, and Lawrence and I had to step in and let him know that he needed to leave.
He's already kind of been the fall guy and waiting.
The Barry muscle.
Exactly. And then he ultimately moved on. But
thankfully.
Lawrence and I were ready to throw down with this guy.
I wouldn't. That would have ruined my career before it even started on this show.
By the way,
he would have been paid out by Matthew Berry. For
right.
A long time.
Right. He'd
choose your own adventure.
By the way, did you just home make of Anthony Richardson jersey? What is going on here?
That's right. You're right. Look, I gotta represent. I gotta represent.
I know, but you couldn't just order one. You had to is this arts and crafts? What is going on here?
I don't like jerseys. And this one got my name on the back. When I did an Anthony Richardson video this summer, I had the kids being Jonathan Taylor, who hopefully he plays, Michael Pittman, all the guys. So we just made it fun. And I don't like wearing jerseys no more.
There's a lot going on here.
There's a lot going on.
There's the homemade arts and craft AR jersey. There's the Player X kind of LA Charger themed hat.
Just look white on white. I'm like a painter today. We ready to go.
That's right. We got a lot to do.
Lots to unpack.
We're gonna see. Lots to unpack with Lawrence's dressed appearance today. But we're also going to get into Nico Collins and Isiah Pacheco. We'll stay Eatin Good, of course, as we always do on Wednesdays, plus keep it open or close it out on Daniel Jones, Khalil Herbert, and Zay Flowers. But before we get into all of that, let's jump into the Rotoworld Player News. And for all of your player news, make sure to go to NBCSports.com. And we start with the topic that is Cooper Kupp potentially playing in Week 5. We got to hear from his head coach, Sean McVay, on the Sean McVay Show on the status of Cooper Kupp.
I think you said, was it champagne problems? Did we say that? First world problems?
We did. You got champagne problems. Yeah. Because hopefully the goal is to be able to get Cooper back. Before we put the cart before the horse, let's get him practicing. But, hopefully we're able to have him. And, man, you had another really good playmaker. And I think Cooper's done such a good job of mentoring Puka, even though he hasn't been playing through this first month.
And you see the latest here from Diana Rossini. Wide receiver Cooper Kupp is pushing to play against the Eagles. The Rams, of course, want to use Kupp on those deep over routes, and we'll test it out to see if he can get close to max speed. The better news, I'm told, the injury was not as serious in terms of long-term as initially feared, which, guys, of course, makes the conversation turn to not just Cooper Kupp, but, Jay, what about Puka Nacua as well?
Very specific reporting on the specific type of routes that Cooper Kupp they want him to run.
I'll just tell you this, as somebody who worked with Diana for a number of years and know her and consider her a friend, I'll tell you, she works. She works hard. Usually, she has really good sources around the league. She does a really good job, I think. So anyway, my point is as far as in this job, and I wonder if you felt this like when you were doing your betting job as well, like there's certain reporters that, like that person's dialed in,
sure.
and that person's, let me see if I can get a second source. Diane is one of those people that's really dialed in.
Yep, no, absolutely. And look, in terms of Puka Nacua and how this impacts him, I guess for our purposes it doesn't really matter because you're going to be starting Puka Nacua. It's a matter of, is he going to be the guy who right now is on pace to break the all-time record for receiving yards and receptions in a season? Probably not. Is he going to be a borderline wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 anyway? Yes, I think absolutely. So I think that with the amount that they're throwing the ball as well, there's enough for 2 guys to eat in this offense.
Yeah, this could be a Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle situation, a Jamar Chase, T. Higgins situation. Certainly, I think
from last year.
Last year, definitely. We got some problem with the ribs there for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I don't know. But you got Puka Nacua. I think you have him ranked 5 or 6 this week. I got him at 6. I don't know if we'll be able to rank him that high once Cooper Kupp is back going healthy. But having them both in the top 12 is definitely in the realm of possibility there.
It is, and so I tweeted this out just before the show. Like I quote tweeted Diana's tweet, and I just basically said and also the Pro Football Talk report that Cooper Kupp has officially been designated to return. So they've started the clock. They've officially started the clock for him to return. So he will be back on the field within 21 days. If he plays this week, I'm starting both. If Cooper Kupp's playing for the Eagles, playing against the Eagles, I should say, I'm starting him. I will have Puka ranked ahead of Kupp. But to your point, Jay, I don't think it matters. If they're active, you're starting them. And I don't know that there's a really decision, should I go Puka or this other guy? Like, the answer is Puka. You're starting Puka even if Cooper Kupp is out there. And I think you're probably starting Cooper Kupp. Now, I get, like, you may have like, Tyreek Hill, because Puka Nacua was a free agent pickup, like, you could have 2 solid wide receivers. I don't know that there's anyone better than this guy right now. 32.5% target share. We've talked about 100 yards or more in 3 or 4 games this season. Him and Justin Jefferson are the only 2 guys with over 500 receiving yards so far this year. And yes, we believe that this offense can support. They're throwing enough. Stafford's playing well enough that it can support 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers, as Lawrence mentions. Whether it's a Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle situation, Chase, T. Higgins kind of thing. Even Evans and Godwin back in the day. We've seen offenses support 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers, including an offense coached by Sean McVay. Like, there were a number of years there where both Kupp and Robert Woods were top 20 fantasy wide receivers.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks as well for a season. I think the other thing, too, is that they're going up against the Eagles, and Eagles' defense hasn't been that great.
No.
Your boy,
Sam Howell, future Hall of Famer. Sam Howell carved him up.
Yes, from to this point, not identified Hall of Fame, but a Hall of Fame that Sam Howell will be a part of. They carved them up. The Vikings carved them up. This hasn't been an elite defense like it was last year. Avonte Maddox is done. It just hasn't clicked for the Eagles. So I think that just with the amount that they're throwing the ball and how well Stafford is playing. Now, the sneaky thing is that Stafford is hurt and he's banged up. Seems like he's going to play anyway. If he's out there, I think you're fine starting both these guys.
But to your point, the Eagles are a bottom 5 pass defense through the first 4 weeks of the season. They just haven't been the same. They really miss Avonte Maddox. Bradbury has not been the same guy.
Slay hasn't been the same guy.
It feels like teams are being able to throw against Philadelphia. They're not getting the pressure that they usually do. They're missing some guys as well on the defensive side. But it's interesting that you bring up how well future Hall of Famer Sam Howell played against the Philadelphia Eagles, because this is a conversation that we had just last week on this show, me and Lawrence did, about Sam Howell and, of course, his favorite quarterback, Desmond Ridder. Adam, can you do me a favor? Can you just roll the tape here that we found from last week's show? Bad day at the office for future Hall of Famer Sam Howell.
That old quarterback, huh? Whew, man, look.
He's still better than your quarterback, Lawrence.
Hey, he wasn't in week 3. He wasn't in week 2, and he won't be in week 4.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
What do you think?
I'm back in the positive. I had a steak dinner, then we went double or nothing. We went to
we
even.
Didn't bet.
No,
we didn't bet last
please.
week. We didn't bet.
You bet with your eyes.
We didn't bet.
Stop it.
It was unofficial.
Stop it. You owe me a steak dinner. You owe me drinks as well. You should just on principle, because Desmond Ridder was so effing bad in London. And
it will be on just principle.
And Sam Howell balled out against the Eagles. Don't make me send Penn State Blake after you.
It just goes to show you what you did in the
he
NFL.
Will take out your kneecaps. I want my Applebee's steak dinner.
Well, then you ain't gonna have a backup fall guy.
Right.
It just goes to show you what you did in the NFL, a week-to-week league.
Yes, this is correct.
The NFL, which is a week-to-week league, it doesn't matter. Come the next week ready to play. The man threw 4 picks the week before, came back, and to be honest, I think Sam Howell had the best game against the Eagles as far as the other quarterbacks. Those teams was getting blown out. Okay. This game was back and forth. The Redskins, Commanders are winning most of the games. So I give credit. But guess what? We live to see another day.
All right, fine.
Jay.
Okay, here you go. Listen.
Now
Ridder's playing the Texans.
Yes, sir. I'm with that.
You want to get another bet this week?
I'm with that.
Ridder versus Howell?
And you got the Bears.
All right, there you go. That's right.
Stakes up, baby. Stakes up.
There we go. There we go. I'm going to eat good in the neighborhood for like a month.
This is going to go on until Taylor Heineke comes in or
which might be about halftime.
Yeah. No, not Arthur Smith. You like Arthur Smith, right? He's the one keeping Desmond Ridder in the game.
Yeah.
You like him, right?
I don't.
All right, there we go.
I don't like Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
He's getting more targets than Johnny Smith and Kyle Pitts. Like, none of it makes sense. Get us out of this, Connor. We're all over the place.
We're going to jump into the notable injuries we're tracking right now because it is Wednesday as we get a lot of injury reports throughout the week. We already talked a lot about Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor and Javonte Williams dealing with the hip. I think the notable name right here, though, Matthew, is Kenny Pickett dealing with the knee injury. I mean, this could be a big deal for the Steelers' offense. I know Pickett has really, really struggled, but ideally you'd like him healthy and out there for the consistency.
Right. I mean, like, listen, he hasn't been good, but I feel like he'll be better than Mitch Trubisky.
Right.
And just, you feel bad for the Steelers' offense. We thought a lot of good things were going to happen for the Steelers' offense based on the preseason, based on the way Pickett ended the season last year, but that hasn't come to fruition. And no Deontay Johnson. They can't seem to get the running game going as well. Najee Harris, Pat Fryermuth is banged up as well, and now they're at home against a red-hot Ravens team, a divisional rival. That's always seriously.
Because you're right about what you're about to say, but it won't be like that this time. Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
No, it's always tough. It doesn't. That's one of those like. It literally is it's a college rivalry. It's literally like it doesn't matter what the records are, whatever.
Feels like Willis McGahee, he plays in every single one of these games.
It really does. No, but like I remember like when I grew up in College Station, Texas, so Texas A&M and Texas was always like the big rivalry going up, for years when I was growing up, and it didn't matter. There'd be years where A&M was awful, but they always played Texas tough, or vice versa, where Texas was bad and A&M was a top 10 team, and it's one of those games that it doesn't matter what the record are for those two teams. They truly hate each other. They always play tough.
Exactly.
That will be a very hard-fought battle. But again, you'd feel a lot better about George Pickens, about the run game, about I don't know. I guess Calvin Austin, if you hit your super deep league, you use him, right? You'd feel better about the Steelers as a whole if Kenny Pickett won under center. It's really, I guess, George Pickens when I think about it.
I think it's a weird thing because Trubisky will give you, on average, a better level than Pickett has showed so far, but there's just no chance that Trubisky is a top 15 quarterback, and there is that chance that Pickett could eventually get there. I think that chance is dwindling, but Pickett has the highest ceiling.
By the way, also, Ravens are -4 in this game, which is shocking to me.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. What you were saying about how, and Lamar has had trouble with the Steelers in the past. But the after getting whooped by the Texans, the Steelers did. It's interesting to see that the Ravens, who just destroyed the Browns defense, albeit DTR through 3 picks, but they just did that, and the Steelers just did that, and now you have a 4-point spread. That is very interesting, especially since we could be looking at money Mitch Trubisky making a start here.
Yeah, it's usually always close, but boy, oh boy, if Mitch were starting, I think I'd like the Ravens given the points.
I'm with you.
I think Trubisky might be better than the level that Pickett has shown so far, and it's still TJ Watt. That defense is better than the one that gave up 30 points.
You'd take the points and you take the Steelers?
No, I just think 4 is right. Okay. I wouldn't feel great either way.
All right, fair enough.
Let's jump into Who's Eatin Good, presented by Applebee's. Of course, this is the time of the week where we look at some players that are on a hot stretch, and really ask the question if they can sustain it. Lawrence, starting with Isiah Pacheco, who's got the Vikings this week. He comes in as RB14 for Barry's Week 5 rankings. Pacheco had some big moments against the Jets defense on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, Isiah Pacheco, especially these past 2 games, he's been eating so good that the Applebee's restaurant going to make him wash dishes. I mean, he's running the ball like the rent is due, like he got the eviction notice. And the best thing about this is, fellas, his carries are increasing each game. He went from 8 to 12 to 15 to 20. He's been a top 5 running back the past 2 weeks, and he's doing it efficiently, averaging 5 yards on the ground. Now, he goes against the Vikings this weekend, who are the 9th best against running backs, but they're the 2nd worst against receivers. So he's going to have opportunities in that game to have a 3rd straight week where he gets in the end zone. So I like him now, and I like him the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the 14th best running back so far this week. He's averaging 20 touches a game over the last 2 weeks. What's exciting, though, is also he's starting to get used in the passing game. 3 or more targets in 3 or 4 games this season. He's got an 83% catch rate, which is not something that he was really known for coming out of college. Yeah. People were questioning whether he would have, as you like to say it, Connor, soft hands. I have to tell you, when he runs angry. You know what I mean? Like, it's the best way I can describe it.
You run like you owe him something.
Right, exactly. I mean,
like you better pay him.
I think of whenever I see him run, I think of the, I think of the Mark Jackson. It's an NBA thing, but like Mark, Mama, there goes that man. You know what I mean? Like, that's the phrase that always comes to my mind when I see him run, because he runs so angry. I love it.
He's like the antithesis of Le'Veon Bell, who was kind of just always gliding and waiting for his moment. Isiah Pacheco is just the arm movements. He certainly looks the part.
Right. He's just like, I'm not going to try to shift. I'm just running through you.
Yes.
And he's getting better. He done got better with his vision and stuff like that. That was a part that, he struggled with coming out of college, but now it's starting to.
And they're trusting him more and more, giving him more and more work. We thought this would be like a 2, maybe 3-headed committee, and it's the Isiah Pacheco show. And I think as they get close to the playoffs, you'll see McKinnon get a little bit more worked in, but certainly here for the early and middle part of the season, it's going to be Isiah Pacheco.
And I like what you brought up, Barry, that he is getting involved in the pass game. They're just still haven't figured it out with the wide receivers yet. Now you're at the point where Mahomes is like, okay, Kelsey or running back outlets maybe at this point.
That's scary.
That's great.
Teams.
Right. That's great news for Pacheco. Jay, how about Nico Collins and the consistency he's had this week in this Texans offense? In large part, C.J. Stroud just does not look like a rookie quarterback right now. And on top of that, Collins is getting the target share out of these pass catchers.
Yep, number 7 wide receiver in fantasy to this point, Nico Collins. All the buzz has been about Puka Nacua. Nico Collins is having a similar season to Puka Nacua, and he's been incredible. He's been the beneficiary of C.J. Stroud being better than anyone could have imagined. Now, they did have another offensive lineman go down, so they are give backups to the backup and getting hurt, but just doesn't seem to matter for C.J. Stroud. He's having the best start to a career that a rookie quarterback has ever had. And he's been doing it against some decent defenses as well. So Atlanta's secondary doesn't really scare you. So, I mean, Nico Collins is just a locked-in top 15 wide receiver going forward, that type of range.
I mean, 9 targets or more in 3 of 4 games as well. At least 6 receptions for 80 yards in 3 out of 4 games so far this season. And he's 3rd. This is crazy. He's 3rd, as you see it there on your screen. He is he's one of 4 wide receivers this season with multiple games of 140 yards. When you're on a screen with Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, and Puka Nacua, to your point, Jay, in terms of the kind of season Nico Collins is having, he's 3rd in yards per route run this season. Ayuk and Tyreek Hill. Brandon Ayuk and Tyreek Hill are the only 2 guys ahead of him. When you're on that kind of list, when it's, I'm with you on Nico Collins.
Yeah, same.
Top 20 wide receiver.
Yeah, same here.
And Tank Dell, both guys.
Yeah, and I'll add to this by saying, while the Falcons DBs definitely won't scare you, they are top 7 against receivers and running backs in fantasy. But with C.J. Stroud throwing the ball.
That's because, here's the reason. Because Desmond Ritter's throwing so many picks, you don't actually get the opportunity to throw against these guys. Because the defense is on
Trevor Lawrence, so Jared Goff, he didn't light up the Falcons. Trevor Lawrence, he didn't light up the Falcons, but yes, Desmond Ridder was in that bakery handing out them turnovers. You feel me? So the Falcons is solid, but with the volume of
dad jokes is my lane, right? You know that dad jokes is my lane. I know you are, but I'm just saying, All right, go ahead.
Yeah. But
I'm just messing.
Texans, they're the 4th best passing offense right now, but the 7th worst rushing. So that's how I expect them to do their thing against Atlanta.
And when you look at this offense with Nico Collins, this is absolutely sustainable. I don't think this is a question at all. When you look at what Stroud did at Ohio State, he leaned on Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm not saying Nico Collins is going to be, what we expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to be one day, but he's a big-bodied wide receiver that you could throw it to him when he's covered. And Stroud is a guy that trusts his wide receivers to make a play. So you're already seeing him earn that target share from the rookie quarterback that's been phenomenal. I expect this to continue. Lawrence, our last player here, Christian Kirk, who a total dud week 1, and that kind of lied to us because since week 2, Kirk is wide receiver 12 on a points per game basis right now. He does have the Bills, which is a little bit scary, but Kirk has really picked it up since a disappointing start to the season. Yeah,
the Bills is real scary, but what I'll find interesting is how it works out when Zay Jones, or if he comes back this week. Because like you said, week 1 was the dud. After that, the targets are like up and down, up and down. What helped him in week 3 was he scored the touchdown. Wasn't a lot of production, but he had the touchdown there. But it's solid. If Zay Jones is out again, then I would feel comfortable feeling like he could have another double-digit point fantasy game.
Yeah, I mean, he had a 40% target share last week. That's just not sustainable in this offense as well. Here are the positives. 81% of his fantasy points are coming from the slot, which is where he typically lines up. But Zay Jones demands some targets. And so we'll see whether, when Zay Jones comes back, we know Ridley is the alpha in this passing offense. And so whether it's Kirk versus Zay Jones for the number 2. But certainly for this game in London for Kirk against Buffalo, I'm at wide receiver 24. So I'm as a high upside, mid-tier wide receiver 3. Again, the availability of Zay Jones will impact some of that as well. Buffalo is a good defense. They'll be aware of him. So I'm not ready to suddenly be like, yes, all the concerns after week 1 and after the preseason where we just didn't see Kirk that involved because it was all about the outside of the field. I'm not sure those are gone yet. We need to see what happens when Zay Jones comes back. But as long as he's out, Kirk is very much a viable wide receiver 3.
Yeah, it's still weird that he had that week 1 and had 3 targets and 1 catch for Christian Kirk, but he did have the 14 targets against the Chiefs in a game that Zay Jones did play. So I think ultimately you're going to wind up somewhere in the middle where he's a 7, 8 target guy.
The only point on that one though is that the Chiefs specifically they're bad against the slot. Christian Kirk was on my love list prior to that list because prior to that week because we thought that's where they would attack. Again, like sort of in a neutral game script. Just if Zay Jones is fully healthy, does he get the kind of volume? I mean, again, he got a 40% target share last week.
Yeah.
This offense has been disappointing, too. Trevor Lawrence, it's kind of been rocky for him.
Division's wide open, fellas. That division's open.
Yeah, I do think the Jags, I believe in this offense. I think Trevor Lawrence is legit. I think he's a top 7, 8 quarterback in the NFL, and they just have this weird disparity right now where their success rate on offense is very high in the top 10, but their results are bottom 5, and that's just because they cannot convert a third or fourth down. That Chiefs game was comical. They had all these they were an inch away and they just could not convert. Eventually they will convert those plays. They'll stay on the field longer. They'll accumulate more yards and points. I'd be a buyer in the Jags.
Their line needs to get better as well. Right. That's been one issue as well. It's just the line's been tough so far.
Basketball season is almost here, and that means one thing. It's draft season. Get the Rotoworld Basketball Draft Guide, which includes all the rankings, player outlooks, and projections you need to win your league this year. Go to NBCSports.com to get your draft guide now, and use code HOOPS23 to save 20% off and receive a $10 Fanatics e-gift card. Maybe we'll get Matthew to sign a couple of those basketball draft guides as well. All right, we're going to break. When we're back, keep it open. Close it out.
Well, I'm not satisfied with anything right now, so that's collectively as a team.
Are you and Daniel on the same page, like both ways? Like, does he understand fully what you expect of him?
Yeah, I'd say Daniel and I are in constant communication. So I think we have a good understanding of one another. And again, there's certain plays that happen in a game where, again, I'm not going to coach everybody the same. But I have a great appreciation for Daniel and how he approaches things.
Sit here at the happy hour bar, and that was Brian Daboll on the Giants offense, kind of the viral meme in football heard around the world this week and why we were out break. Dan Dugan, that covers the Giants for The Athletic, said Brian Dable just told him Andrew Thomas will not practice today. John Michael Schmitz, their rookie center, will not practice today. And guard Shane Lemieux will also not practice today. It sounds highly unlikely Thomas will play on Sunday, and definitely a question with Schmitz. Justin Pugh also won't be ready. So with all of that, the Giants' glorious offensive line that we've seen so far this year, Jay, is it over for Daniel Jones as a starting quarterback in fantasy?
Well, I think it is until they get a viable offensive line, because we've just seen this season that there's no time, there's no chance, and yes, he's making mistakes, but you're going to make mistakes when you just have no time for receivers to get open. And now he goes up against, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb and Wilkins and all these guys. Like, that is a real pass rush in Miami. The secondary has struggled a bit, but I mean, you just get to a point with an offensive line where it just ruins everything. And until they fix that, I mean, do you see any hope, Connor, for some of these younger guys?
No, here's the larger issue, too. They're playing Miami's offense that's going to look to get back on track, and the Giants' defense has been horrible this season under Wink Martindale, and why that relates to Daniel Jones and the offense is pass rushers are pinning their ears back against this very weak offensive line. The Giants are very pass-happy, predictable, especially without Saquon Barkley, and Jay, it's just compounded into a disaster for the offense as well.
Look, he's been under 200 passing yards in 3 or 4 games. He's kept it somewhat afloat because of the rushing, but 0 passing touchdowns in 3 out of 4 games. 63% of Daniel Jones' fantasy points this entire year came in that second half against Arizona. I mean, honestly, like, I'm at QB 20, and that's in a week in which we have 4 teams on a bye, right? I mean, like, so I'm going to close it out just to, get back to the premise of the segment. I'm going to close it out on Daniel Jones until we see some improvement. And I'll just say very quickly, like, Jay, I'm shocked by this. I quickly glanced at this. The line in this game is 48.5. I want the under in this game. Unless they're thinking it's 48.
You know how that's
unless you want to know 49-0. Unless you think it's 49-0. Like, I don't see how the Giants score, because not only is the offensive line brutal, but and Daniel Jones has no time to throw, and we don't expect Saquon to play in this game, but also, like, none of their guys are getting open. Like, I mean, like, we haven't seen the development of Jalen Hyatt, right? I mean, you see a moment here or two from Isaiah Hodgins and Darren Waller, but honestly, like, help a guy out. Like, it's just the receivers aren't getting separation. He's got no time to throw. Daniel Jones looks a little shell-shocked. Like, it doesn't look good.
It doesn't.
It's
I
all
guess
bad.
The counterpoint would be that Miami can score 21 fewer points than they did 2 weeks ago and cover the total by themselves. And just this offense is just so insane that they can get to high 30s, and at that point the Giants only need to get to 14 or something to cover. But I agree, it does seem a little high. I just think this Giants offensive line situation is an outlier that is really difficult. Like, they gave up 10 sacks to Seattle, who don't have a good pass rush.
But the difference, and I realize that we're talking crazy numbers here. The difference in the 70-20 game is that Denver actually moved the ball. I mean, again, like, I know, like, well, they won by 50 points, but still, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, as bad as Denver is, that's at least a competent offense compared to what the Giants are, and I just don't know that they need to put up the kind of point. Like, I think the Giants' defense is bad, but I think it's better than the Broncos' defense.
Yes,
and
for sure.
And the Giants' offense is much worse than the Broncos' offense.
Yep,
Again,
so
you're talking about a 50-point victory. I get it, and it's 70 points. You only need to get to 49, to cover this. But I'm just.
So the line is 11, the total being what it is. The projected score is like 30-19. I agree. It's hard to see the Giants getting to 19 in this game.
Well, they couldn't get to 1 in week 1 versus the Cowboys. So what are we even talking about?
But they got 3 against Seattle, right?
3
So
against Seattle.
that's an improvement.
There you go.
This Dolphins defense, right, is 5th against quarterbacks in fantasy. But 2 of those quarterbacks was Herbert and Josh Allen, the top 2 quarterbacks. And Daniel Jones ain't them. He definitely ain't them with this offense around him. So there's not really much for me to add to this. I got him at quarterback 25 with the bye weeks. This is going to get bad. This Dolphins defense
You hate him
pissed
even more
off.
than I do. You hate him even
Dolphins
more than I do.
defense mad. They going to go get him. So obviously I'm keeping it closed.
Yeah, I had him at 20 just because I think they're rushing there a little bit. One last question for you guys. I'm just curious here. Because, as you know, the Giants are the only team in the NFL that has had 3 primetime games so far, where they've been outscored by, like, I don't know, 75 points or something in those 3. Well, anyway, so this week it's a normal game. They play Miami. But then next week They play the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football right here on NBC. And
we flex?
Very exciting. I don't think it's too early to flex, unfortunately. We're stuck with them. But here's my question. My question for you guys here is just internally. And you turn off the cameras here for a second. Do you think, yes, I like the Bills to win that. Do you think when we promo that, when NBC cuts the promo first, this week on Sunday Night Football, are the Giants anywhere in it, or is it just Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football?
Hopefully a Von Miller return.
Right, Von Miller comes back, right? And just they don't even mention who they're playing. It's just all about, That'd
be slick.
Yeah, that's what they should do. The Buffalo Bills against, we're not going to tell you who. Just tune in to see who they play.
How did America let this happen? How did they give the Giants? It's not like the Giants were projected to be an 11-win team.
It's tough. All I know is if we've got to figure out a way, guys, and let's put our heads together. We're all company men here. Let's put our heads together and figure out a way to get Taylor Swift to that game. Because if she's at that game, over 27 million people watch Zach Wilson.
Yes.
Again, I'm just telling you. That's what we need.
Highest rated game since the Super Bowl, I believe.
I mean, it was ridiculous, right? I'm just telling you. So let's figure that out. But that's my question. We'll just be interesting to see what the promo people do with that one in Week 5. But we got a great game this week.
We do.
Dallas, San Francisco is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10.
Our next one here, Dameon Pierce. He's got the Falcons on deck this week. Lawrence, it's been kind of a tale of different weeks for Dameon Pierce. The good news is weeks 3 to 4, he's averaging 21 touches a game. The production's been just okay, but the volume's been phenomenal. Is that enough reason for you to keep this one open right now?
This one, I'm not going to go with it this week. Although he's running back 26 for the season, which is actually a little better than what you would expect based on how the numbers have looked, how their running game has looked. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the Falcons are 6th best against running backs in fantasy, and they're coming off a game where Travis Etienne ran 20 carries for 55 yards against. So, and I don't even. The Texans going to be able to move the ball versus team. I don't even know that they'll need to try to do it on the ground. They'll be able to do it in the air. So, I don't like that it took them 24 carries to get to 81 yards, and that's because they were always leading the Steelers by double-digit points. So I'm gonna keep it close one, but I'm closing it.
I would keep it open just because Laramie Tunsil's coming back, Titus Howard is coming back, even though Kendrick Green is done and on injured reserve. At least they get those two guys back. They're 2 tackles, they're 2 best offensive linemen. And I just think that Stroud is good enough that he's going to be in scoring position and he can fall into the end zone. And if you've got a guy who's going to get 18 carries and has a good chance of falling into the end zone, and also got a decent reception last week as well and can be used more in that game, I think there is some upside for Dameon Pierce.
Back-to-back games with over 25 receiving yards for Dameon Pierce. To your point about he's starting to get a little bit involved in the passing game. He's had 2 different games, 2 last games with 21 touches a game, over 83 total yards per game. I think this is going to be, whether they're leading the Falcons, they're not going to get blown out by the Falcons. So I think in whether neutral or positive game script, Pierce is being used more as well. So I'm keeping it open. I'm running back 21, and your point about the offensive line getting healthy, them getting Howard and Tunsil back, I think they're both at practice today. Huge for that offensive line and for Pierce. So not only do I think, am I keeping it open, actually I'm trying to buy low on Dameon Pierce.
Yeah. Also, I just think Dameon Pierce is really good as well. I think he's a really good running back, and he showed that last season.
Barry, how about Khalil Herbert, who's got your Commanders coming up? And when you look at Khalil Herbert, he was completely written off for Week 4, and he ends up having his best game of the season. Is that enough hope to maybe make him flex viable this week?
I don't think so. I'm going to keep him open begrudgingly. I'm at running back 27, so he's a little bit touchdown dependent here. The positives of Khalil Herbert is he looked really good last week. It felt like the entire offense took a turn in the right direction last week. Not just Justin Fields, all of it. I mean, Denver solves a lot of issues there, but he had more rushing yards in Week 4 than the first 3 weeks combined. He got 78% of the team's running back rushes in Week 4. He played almost 80% of the snaps, as well as you see it there on your screen. So Khalil Herbert, who's had a double-digit target share in every game this season, which is positive. They've kept him on the field when they've gone pass heavy. They are almost a touchdown underdog to my Commanders and future Hall of Famer Sam Howell. So that's the only concern here. But the fact that Khalil Herbert played so well last year in a game last week in a game in which they almost won and they should have won, and it's a short week, feels like they probably dial his workload back a little bit because again they're traveling on a short week. The game's in Washington, but so I have him as a low-end flex, but I am keeping it open. So running back 27 for me this week.
Yeah, I got him at running back 24. Going to leave it open as well. And this is what I'm noticing here, right? So he played the 78% snaps this week, out-touched Roschon Johnson 22-6, which is wild. In week 1, he played Khalil Herbert, played 36% of the snaps. They were getting blown out by Green Bay. Week 3 versus the Chiefs, 55% getting blown out by the Chiefs. His highest 2 percentages of snaps and games is where they were in the game. That's versus the Bucs. That's versus the Broncos. So I think it's like, depending on how this game go, that's what'll dictate how Khalil Herbert is used.
If I had to predict it, I would say somewhere in the 50 to 70% of the snaps. It's, again, he got such a heavy workload. And again, it's a short week and that kind of stuff. And again, like, my Commanders, jokes aside, are almost a touchdown favorite in this game, Jay.
Yeah, they are. And look, you hate starting your running backs against Sam Howell because you know that the other team's going to need to be throwing to keep up with the great Sam Howell at all times.
Thank you.
And they are dogs in this one, so potentially not game script friendly.
Yeah, but anyway, but Lawrence and I are both begrudgingly keeping it open.
Lawrence, what about Najee Harris, who's got the Ravens this weekend? Listen, Najee was being drafted, as RB11 in terms of ADP. Right now, he's RB41 in points per game on the season.
Yeah, speaking of 11th drafted running back, the Ravens defense is 11th best against running backs.
Oh, nice.
Jalen Warren.
Really good sound.
What was Najee Harris's ranking? Running back 41.
41 in points per game.
Jalen Warren is running back 26 right now. So I'm keeping that close. And I actually have him. I actually have Najee Harris ranked as running back 31 this week. So that's me being generous. But he has yet to score a touchdown. He has yet to play more than 57% of the snaps. So. And he's not getting any receiving work. That's all going to Jalen Warren. So I'm going to have to keep it close this week, especially with them not knowing what's going to happen at quarterback.
Yeah, it's not a good matchup against the Ravens defense that is trending towards elite. I will say that Jalen Warren's not doing anything on the ground. It's all through the air. He's averaging 3.4 yards per carry. Najee Harris, quietly, 4.3 yards per carry. He's been more efficient. He's been
slightly less terrible.
He's been slightly less terrible.
More efficient is no. He's been less terrible.
If he doesn't have a touchdown, which you don't love, as someone who is at this point kind of a touchdown-dependent guy.
Single-digit fantasy points in 3 out of 4 games this year.
It's not great, but he is still getting the work on the ground. He's got effectively double Warren's carries. It's just not a great matchup for him. So he's a guy I think you put in your flex and you don't feel great about it, man.
Yeah, I'm closing it out. I'm with Lawrence here. I'm at running back 30 in a week and when there's a number of running backs on bye or banged up, but under 5 receiving yards in 3 out of 4 games, to your point, like he's not getting any work in this receiving game, so he does need to fall into the end zone to have any sort of value. I don't know what this offense is going to look like under Mitch Trubisky if he, in fact, starts. That's the expectation as we sit here today on a Wednesday. So for me, I'm just closing it out on pretty much every single team except yours, Jay. In our show league, you should start him.
I've got him. I think I am going to have to start him. It's more like Kendrick Bourne. The bench is pretty thin. Connor, in terms of the Steelers O-line, we talked a lot about the Giants O-line and the Texans O-line and how one team has managed its difficulties really well in Houston and the Giants are a complete disaster. The Steelers quietly have an awful O-line this year. Do you think there's any hope that they can get that better and make the offense more viable?
Not really, because how the Texans did it under Bobby Slowick, who D'Amico Ryans brought with him from San Francisco, is quick game, and Stroud is perfect on his drops. The ball comes out when he hits his drop. He has excellent field vision. He's very accurate. When you look at the Steelers right now, you can't say that about Kenny Pickett, even if it's Mitch Trubisky. You can't say that about Mitch Trubisky. And Matt Canada is honestly, this is harsh. He's one of the worst offensive coordinators on the
planet. He got that burner account out there.
So, I mean, no.
Blame Canada.
Blame Canada. I mean, to be honest with you, no. I don't feel that way. When you turn in terms of the scheme of the offense.
This team feels like it's underperformed its talent violently for 2 years on offense. There's no creativity. There's no. You look at I know the talent is different, but look at the Rams game. Look at how McVay is using his weapons versus how Matt Canada is using his. And I understand Stafford v. Pickett, but at the same time, there's just nothing to hold on to in this offense right now.
Yeah, I mean they're also beat up as we talked about. I mean, no Deontay Johnson, no Pat Freiermuth. So it's all a disaster. What I want to know is. The internet is so creative. How has no one taking Steelers lowlights and set them to Blame Canada. The song from the South Park,
of course,
the South Park
absolutely.
movie, Blame Canada,
right?
I mean, it's an all-time classic. I absolutely love that movie. It's a truly brilliant movie. The soundtrack is actually really good as well. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, there's a song on that soundtrack called Blame Canada. And I don't know how somebody doesn't take that music. And
that's the chorus. Blame Canada.
Right, it totally
over
is.
and over
yeah,
again.
Exactly.
It honestly might have been done. We'll check after the show.
Yeah, maybe.
It just seems too.
It feels too obvious, but I feel like it would have crossed my radar if it had happened.
Tough week for Matt Canada. Matt Canada and Daniel Jones. They're the two who are really struggling at the moment.
Let's stay with this game, but look on the other side with
and
the
Penn
Ravens.
State
and
Those are the three.
Always.
In
always
an eternal
Penn State
struggle. Penn State Blake.
Zay Flowers in this game, obviously for the Ravens, while he got off to a hot start in terms of target share and scheme touches under Todd Monken here, Barry, it's dropped off a little bit in recent weeks, and I think the most important thing is he hasn't found the end zone yet.
No, he hasn't, but I think it's coming. Look, he's had double-digit targets in 2 out of 4 games so far this season. Now, I get it. It's been a little bit feast or famine because he's been under 5 in the other 2 games. But for me, so far this year, he's got a 28% target share on the season. They are looking for him. Beckham is out. Bateman's banged up as well. Mark Andrews got off the schneid last week. I feel like this is the week where I think he can probably do it because, again, the Steelers' defense, as much as we want to bash the Steelers' offense, the Steelers' defense also not particularly good as well. I mean, the Steelers are 26th against the pass through 4 weeks. We saw the Texans have their complete way with the Steelers' secondary. I don't think they're going to be able to get any kind of pressure on Lamar Jackson. They'll probably keep a spy in to try to limit his rushing ability. So I kind of like Zay Flowers as an upside wide receiver 3. I have him at wide receiver 28. I get it's been a little feast or famine, but I'm going to keep it open. I think he's a wide receiver 3 with upside. Keeping it open.
I'm going to keep it open as well. I got him at wide receiver 31. And just to add to that, what you said about the Steelers defense, they've given up the 3rd most points to receivers in fantasy this year. We don't know if OBJ will come back this week, nor Rashad Bateman. And Lamar Jackson only threw 19 attempts in week 4. Now, part of that was because DTR was giving these guys opportunities for easy scores. So I don't expect that to happen again either. So, we sticking with them this week.
They'll try to play ball control. They'll try to hide Trubisky is my I think. Don't you think? They may not work, but they'll try to, right.
People have tried to hide Mitch Trubisky for half a decade now. It's just kind of his existence. I think a sneaky problem for Zay Flowers is that Mark Andrews was back to being kind of Travis Kelce Mark Andrews last week, where he was playing like the best tight end in football. But with Flowers, he is their number 1 wide receiver. And in theory, this offense is going to throw the ball more at some point. He's the most talented guy. Question for you, Matthew. If you had Najee Harris and Zay Flowers and you had to start one as your flex this week, who would you choose?
Zay Flowers.
Okay. Well,
I just
no
think
hesitation.
Who?
Najee or Zay?
Yeah, Zay.
I just think Zay.
I
I think that all Najee Harris bashing jokes aside, I'd rather have a piece of the Ravens offense than a piece of the Steelers offense. That, to me, Najee Harris is entirely touchdown dependent. And Zay Flowers can get there without a touchdown. We'd like a touchdown from him, but he can get there without it. Because, again, they're manufacturing touches for him. They're close to the line of scrimmage stuff. There's no passing game involvement for Najee Harris. So it's close because, you'd probably, if you were pricing it, you'd probably have better odds on Najee Harris scoring a touchdown than Zay Flowers, right? But I'd rather be part of the Ravens offense than the Steelers offense at this point.
Yeah, and as inconsistent as Flowers has been, it's still 78, 62, 48, 56 yards. Like, he's still getting yards. It's just that the touchdowns haven't been there. He's been a bit reliant on big plays. The other thing with Zay Flowers, though, is that he's a rookie. He's played 4 games. He should get better as the season goes on.
I mean, again, for the season, Najee Harris is averaging 7.1 fantasy points per game. He's had single digit in 3 out of 4 games. So, again, to your point, like, Zay Flowers just 56, 40. He's got a better chance at, double-digit points.
Agreed.
Speaking of touchdown dependent, you don't often hear that with a wide receiver, but that is Drake London right now, who has the Texans. It has not been pretty for Drake London, in large part because of what he's dealt with in this offense. Lawrence, I mean, is there any way you can keep this one open? Because people drafted him to be much different than
let's be clear, Connor. They drafted him because Lawrence kept telling everyone how good Desmond Ridder was, and they believed in Desmond Ridder. They believed Lawrence. Drake London being on rosters and fantasy is entirely Lawrence Jackson's fault. More don't lose. Please let him hear it. if you're a
Please, you get to explain yourself.
I actually hear that after Zach Wilson's very competent performance on Sunday night, Taylor Swift actually gave the worst quarterback in the NFL a belt to Desmond Ridder, unfortunately.
Well, you know, at this point, you cannot argue that. So last week I said this. Last week I said this about Jahan Dotson. Why would I start the wide receiver 75? Well, I'm going to say the same thing here for Drake London. Why would I start the wide receiver 55 in fantasy, right?
I don't believe he's scored in America this year.
Not to mention
he scored in London.
Right, correct.
Not to mention the Texans are second best against receivers in fantasy. 78 yards for Zay Flowers was the most they've given up to a receiver. Yep. Michael Pittman only 56 yards. George Pickens 25 yards. Christian Kirk 54 and Calvin Ridley 40. So I'm not starting a guy who averages 31.
In games in which he doesn't score a touchdown, and again, I don't believe he's scored a touchdown in America this year. He's averaging 2.6 fantasy points per game in games in which he doesn't score a touchdown. He's got a 50% catch rate this season. Maybe that's on him, or maybe it's just because Desmond Ridder just can't throw it anywhere close to him. Lawrence, I just have 3 words for you. I have 3 words for you and 3 words only for you. Heineke. Those are my 3 words.
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. And this is,
I'm closing it out on Drake London, obviously.
Yeah, gotta close it out. I will say this.
My wide receiver 41, and that was being generous.
Yeah, same ranking, and that is definitely generous. Drake London was a couple of tippy toes away from coming down with a second touchdown in the second half, but he couldn't come down with it, so that would have, boosted him a little bit, but I still would have closed it this week even if he had that.
I'm glad you brought that up, Lawrence. I think you were the only person in America still watching that game after what Desmond Ridder subjected everyone to in the first half.
Well, he had a good second half. See, nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. So, hey, we just like to work with what we saw last. Let's just head on into Houston.
I wouldn't be starting Drake London this week, but I would be buying low on Drake London because, again, it's like the Zach Wilson thing we talked about last week. Either Ridder is going to get better or he's not going to be the quarterback, and it's going to be Heineke. And Heineke showed in Washington that he can support fantasy wide receivers.
1,000%. Drake London, like all jokes aside, Drake London's a talented wide receiver. Like, he's a talented young player. He's just handcuffed entirely by the slow-paced, run-first nature of this offense and a quarterback that just isn't there right now. Yes, Heineke will be inconsistent, but whether it's been Terry McLaurin or others, he has supported fantasy-relevant wide receivers. Like, Heineke can throw. Like, he's not scared to sling it.
Heineke's problem is he throws interceptions. That's his problem, which for fantasy purposes is kind of okay for your wide receivers. Ridder's problem is that he can't throw it to anyone, really, at the moment, outside of Jaguars.
I will say this, too, though Ridder did throw that good pass to Drake London where he didn't get the toes down, but he should have had 3 picks in the first half.
Yeah.
He had Mac Hollins beat. He underthrew it. Hey, who we got next?
Last one here, Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison kind of on a milk carton after no catches on 1 target last week against Carolina.
Yeah, it's tough. And look, I think that he was very dependent on big plays in the first couple of games, but his targets were going up. So I would just write this one off. Very weird game against Carolina. I think the Chiefs with the total that high, they'll need to throw. I still think he's the wide receiver 2.
He only got 1 target in that game, but by the way, that 1 target, if you watch the game, like it was he was wide open and just Cousins missed him. Like Cousins hits him, and it's 1 big play for 60 yards, which again, it's a little bit of his game, but again, like I think the narrative's slightly different on him. It's this game against the Chiefs is the highest over/under on the slate. Like I want as much of this game as possible. I'm keeping it open on Jordan Addison as well. I think he's, wide receiver 3-4 in that range with some upside. There's going to be some variance there, but like again, I prefer him over KJ Osborne for the number 2 wide receiver on the Vikings.
Yeah, just real quick, I'm going to leave it open. Lazard and Garrett Wilson last week combined for 12 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown against the Chiefs. Like you mentioned, highest over/under 53. I'm going to leave it open as well.
Crush your Sunday scaries next weekend with the best remedy possible. Sunday Night Football. Check out NBCSports.com/ScaryGoodSNF to enter for a chance to win a trip for 2 to a Sunday Night Football game next season. And check out our watch party schedule. We're going to one more break. When we're back, we got some early lines for Week 5. Don't forget on DraftKings Sportsbook this season, new customers can bet $5 and pocket $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all the customers can get a no-sweat same-game parlay every day. Download the app and use the promo code BERRY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, The crown is yours. All right, let's look at some early lines courtesy of our good friends at DraftKings. Jay, what do you have your eyes on at the top of this week?
I'm going to make a big call, Connor. I don't feel great about it, but I'm going to make it anyway. I think the Jags are going to beat the Bills outright in London. Really like the way that the Jags played against the Falcons. I think they turned the corner. That defense is playing really well with Tyson Campbell and Darius Williams. Josh Allen quietly is the Jacksonville Josh Allen, who, by the way, destroyed the Buffalo Josh Allen last time they played. He is playing extremely well. Lawrence, I think that his play has been better than his results so far. And the Bills quietly, Tre'Davious White done for the season. They're really thin at corner at the moment. And also Jordan Poyer's been out too, so I worry a bit about their secondary. But here's the main thing. You know when weird stuff happens? Weird stuff happens when one team has to fly 8 hours to London and the other team's already there and has been there for a week and isn't as affected by travel. So I think that's a big factor. The fact that the Jags have stayed over in London, they should be fresher, and I think they're going to pull an upset.
Ooh, I like that call. I like that call. So, I'm going to go back to this Texans-Falcons game that we've been talking about. It opened up at 3.5 and then moved to 2.5. It's now down to Falcons -2. But I think the Texans win this game. And I definitely like them getting 2 points. Here, I don't understand this. I mean, just think about it, right? So the Jaguars beat, very handily last week in London, the Atlanta Falcons. 2 weeks ago, Houston beat the Jaguars by 20. Houston has won 2 straight. Atlanta has lost 2 straight. I think we can all sit here and agree, even Lawrence Jackson, who's like third cousin is Desmond Ridder, like they're super close. He defends him like a family member. Even I think we can agree that
Desmond Ridder is his father.
CJ Stroud is better than Desmond Ridder significantly. So the idea that, I know you've often said that home field these days is worth about a point and a half.
Yep.
The game's in Atlanta. So you're telling me that Desmond Ridder and CJ Stroud at this point are a pick'em? And I don't think that's anywhere close to being accurate. Again, the Texans defense has played really well. Their offensive line is getting healthy, as we talked about. Howard and Tunsil are back this week. This line is shocking to me. I mean, and obviously you're seeing it already bet down. I bet it'll be a pick 'em by the time game comes around. But yeah, give me the Texans to win outright at plus money. But also, just if we're talking lines, I'll take the 2 points.
Yep, no, I like it. I think the question is, how good is this Houston defense? I think the offense is real. Stroud's just really good. Collins, Dell, really good. Offensive line getting better. Not sure about this defense. It might be solid, and if it's solid, then they win this game.
It's been plucky. It's held its own, obviously. Yep. I mean, the Steelers are a disaster, but it shut down Jacksonville a little bit, right? So again,
it's not like Baltimore absolutely lit them up either.
But that's Baltimore. Well, yeah, and exactly. That was Baltimore, right? Baltimore in week 1, and then whatever. In week 2, it was Indianapolis and Gardner Minshew. But okay. Anyway.
I'm interested in. We talked about it a little bit earlier. The Ravens at Steelers. Ravens -4, which is weird to me because the Steelers they haven't really had anything positive despite being 2-2. I feel like they got lucky in a couple of games, but this 38.5 is what's interesting to me as well. This is 2 times in a row the Ravens have the lowest total in a week. So I think the Ravens go 30, Steelers get 10. It goes over by a little bit.
Guys, I'm looking at the Jets-Broncos game going over 43 right now. Broncos defense, terrible. Jets have DJ Reed in concussion protocol. They could be without their number 2 corner. They're already missing their number 3 corner in Brandon or 4 corner in Brandon Echols. So no backup. This game's personal between Sean Payton and Nathaniel Hackett. Both sides will empty the bag and try to get as many points possible.
I like that call. It's closing time, which means you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay, Lawrence, and Connor, I'm Matthew. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.